The big body beast mode 2.0 running back Trent Howland finally got his opportunity to shine in Stillwater, and it appears as though that the Thunder and Lightning combo package that we've been waiting for has finally given Oklahoma State an identity.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayO State. Today, we're partially brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today to get the best in the ticketing industry for yourself. Meanwhile, we get to slide into the conversation of RBU not having enough dudes throughout the course of the season up until this game to equal what is supposed to be in Stillwater, Oklahoma. We finally did get to see Trent Howland get his opportunities over some guys like Caleb Hicks and Freddie Brock. He was able to take advantage of that. But I think the beauty of Trent Howland in this season is, even he would tell you, and he recently tweeted out, hey, we've got 8 more opportunities this season to make something happen. You have to appreciate somebody who looks at it like that, somebody who's been kind of, manipulated up and down the depth chart at times, and he's been utilized to certain degrees at times, but never really been the focal point of the rushing attack. Now he gets his opportunity, and you would assume as though that means for the rest of the season, the 1-2 combo of Rodney Fields and Trent Howland is what we should see throughout the rest of the season. It is fair to at least wonder, because sometimes this season it hasn't always been predicated upon, well, what did you do? How did you earn it in this particular ball game? Because against UT Martin, I think most people would agree that Stesi Vailahe was the one who earned the start against Oregon. He was the one hitting the hole the hardest. He was putting his head down. He was trying to run people over. He was trying to turn for extra yards. Not saying that Freddie Brock and Caleb Hicks were not, but in that particular ball game, it was very obvious to me that Stesi earned more carries, which he did not get against Oregon. Likewise, Trent Howland shows up against Oregon, and he was really the only offensive highlight of the day. That one drive where he almost single-handedly drove us all the way down the field before we got down to the goal line, and then we didn't get to see him against Tulsa. Yeah, he did have a little bit of an ankle injury, but it appeared as though coming into the Tulsa game that he was good to go. So it was really surprising to not see him tote the rock against Tulsa. Nonetheless, he gets his opportunity. He runs all over Baylor. And I think whenever you think of Trent Howland and Rodney Fields finally being that 1-2 combo, it was reminiscent of what I thought we might get this season. Justice Hill, Chris Carson. That's what I was hoping this rushing attack would look like. Naturally, Rodney Fields was having like a hip groin injury, and those typically linger for quite some time, so he wasn't able to be super effective until this ball game. If Rodney Fields is going to be healthy for the remainder of the season, and this is finally going to be Trent Howland's opportunity to carpe diem seize the day, it does give us some reasons to have hope throughout the rest of the season. Like Trent Howland gets 16 carries, 84 yards at 5.3 yards per clip. Rodney Fields, 5 carries, 39 yards at 7.8 yards per clip. Trent Howland also chips in 2 touchdowns. Zane Flores, 6 carries, 25 yards at 4.2. Sam Jackson, also 4.5 yards per carry. Yeah, Caleb Hicks, did get in there. And Caleb Hicks has a ton of talent. Vision seems to be the only thing that is preventing him from taking a bigger role. But nonetheless, if you're looking at some of the Cowboy culture dudes that you're going to need to maintain as the season gets even more hectic and as we prepare for the upcoming year, who better than to lead your charge than Trent Howland? The guy who was the leading rusher at Indiana before coming to Oklahoma State, the guy who could have seamlessly slid in to take that Elijah Collins role after Elijah Collins also had an injury-filled year. This is a big opportunity for Oklahoma State in general. We have been searching for an identity. Mike Gundy even talked about before his firing that Oklahoma State still lacks to have an identity. Typically, we can have an identity, whether it be in the passing game or the short passing game or the ability to take the top off with a wide receiver or the ability to grind you out in the run game. Oklahoma State has always had an identity, especially offensively. We haven't had one this season. But if you're talking about Rodney Fields being over 7 yards a carry and you're talking about Trent Howland being over 5 yards per carry, then I would imagine that this is probably the identity that we need to take to the Arizona ball game. And if you're Arizona, right, it's going to be one of those instances where it appears as though that they finally found something in Stillwater that they're willing to hang their hat on. And that seems to be the 1-2 combo of Rodney Fields and Trent Howland. Now, hopefully, we're able to see them in this Arizona game because, again, there was times this season where Sesi Valahe was the best running back. There was times that Trent Howland was the best running back. And then they didn't exactly get the rewards the next game of being the best back in the previous week. This has to be different. Surely the coaching staff can see that, okay, when you give this guy the ball, going back to the Oregon game and this game, he carries it with a different level of purpose, a different level of maturity. Sure, he's able to dominate dudes in the box, and he's able to run some people over. Yards after contact were always going to be something that was important to Trent Howland's success in Stillwater, but his ability to see the hole, right? That's the thing. If Caleb Hicks had the same vision as Trent Howland, then we're probably not having this conversation. We're probably instead having the conversation of Trent Howland is just going to be a packaging guy, which unfortunately did seem like it was plausible coming into the season. If Rodney Fields was going to be healthy and Caleb Hicks was doing what we had been seeing him do in fall camp, he was likely going to be the guy that kind of ran off with it. But there's a clear difference between his ability to get to this outside and Trent Howland's ability to run within the offense. That's one of the biggest things that it appears as though Caleb Hicks struggles with. He's always wanting to hit home runs. He always wants to bounce it, and he always wants to take it 60, 70 yards. Trent Howland has a different philosophy. Trent Howland's philosophy is, give me the rock. If I can get us 3 to 4 to 5 yards of carry every single time, we're eventually going to get down the field and score. We're eventually going to be able to cut down on the first downs to where we can kind of get in a groove, get in a rhythm. And that is precisely what it appeared as though Zane Flores needed. Yeah, I think you could sprinkle in the wrinkle of Sam Jackson being super effective, the Wildcat. But just Zane Flores knowing that in pinch situations, he's going to be able to rely on a Trent or a Sam has to be partially why we did see Zane Flores get a little bit more comfortable in this ball game. If we're looking for an identity, you can't tell me that it didn't finally look like that we could gravitate towards one after watching the Baylor game. And now with Todd Grantham being out and Clint Bowen being in, you have to think that defensively there's reasons for hope now. And those hopes primarily lie in the ball game that Trent Howland had. Sam Jackson added a wrinkle. Rodney Fields looked good. But there's no denying that Trent Howland finally gives us something that defenses now have to focus on as we prepare for Arizona. There's other things that hopefully we're preparing for Arizona as well that we've only seen just minor glimpses of so far. Before we get to that, I do have to remind you all out here that one of the tools that could help make a massive difference for business owners is always going to be QO, formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system that you've heard me talk about on this program before. It just has a new name. And here's precisely why it matters. Every missed phone call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. QO is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through on an app or in your phone or on a computer. So no more carrying multiple phones or having the handline readily available. Their built-in AI agent is an absolute game changer. It can help you answer after-hours calls that can capture leads and keep your business moving even when you're not on the clock. Whether you're a solo operator, juggling everything almost essentially by yourself, or you're just part of a larger team, QO makes it easy for you to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust QO, formerly known as Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at QO.com/LockedOnCollege. That is QUO.com/LockedOnCollege. If you've got existing phone numbers with another service, QO will actually port them over at no extra charge. Get with QO today, where you have no missed calls, meaning you're not going to miss out on customers. So you're going to have all of the opportunities that your business needs to thrive. It was nice to see Josh Ford get some more play. The Stillwater High School tight end native not only gets more action, he's more involved in the offense. He gets a touchdown, which is something that he had talked about, growing up. It was always a dream in Stillwater, America, that someday I'd be catching touchdowns on that football field. We thought by this point in time we'd be talking about Josh Ford having multiple touchdowns this year, but thankfully, we did get to see it, right? We also got to see Will Money targeted a little bit more. And if there's one thing that we looked at the beginning of the season that seemed like we were going to use more of, it was going to be the tight end position. Why else would you have 7-8 tight ends on the roster if you didn't plan on utilizing them a significant amount? Of course, you're going to have the injury to Quentin Stewart. That's going to be problematic. Coming into the season, that we knew in the recruiting process that Jordan Viborni was going to have a little bit of a knee obstacle. I don't know that it was foreseen that it would linger on throughout the course of the season. But now that we have seen this touchdown of Josh Ford, now that we've seen that the identity on the offense could be a rushing attack, this is even more of an opportunity for quarterbacks to get involved. If we're going to have different iterations of quarterback play in the backfield, right? Whether it's Zane Flores by himself or Zane Flores in the backfield with Sam Jackson, the security blanket that every quarterback in the country covets is a quality tight end. I think you can make the argument that somebody like a Brock Purdy probably was able to get into the NFL system so well because of the tight ends that he had readily available to him anytime things got crazy. So if we knew coming into the season that Josh Ford was going to be a quintessential piece of the offense, why are we just now waiting to get him involved? Is there some merit to some of the things that have been floated around, even back to Casey Dunn? If so, maybe we owe Casey Dunn a slight apology. But, Mike Gundy kind of micromanaging the offense seems a little bit more plausible now that we got to see what the Doug Meacham offense looked like without Mike Gundy involved. So with that being said, could it be that throughout the rest of the season, if we're going to use different shakeups in the backfield, if we're going to use different quarterback options, if we're going to use different wide receivers, could this not now finally mean that we need to load up more on tight ends? Because if our identity is going to be a rushing attack and defenses have to do whatever physically possible to stop Trent Howland and Rodney Fields, well, who does that typically leave more open in the middle of the field? The tight ends. So I'm hoping that while we're searching for this identity and while it looks like we may have finally found one, the next layer of that onion should be the tight end play. Just like Will Ferrell would say, we need more cowbell. We need more tight end play. This is the position group that has the most scholarships on the team other than, linemen. They have the ability to be linemen, but they also have the ability to help the quarterback. If we're talking about Zane Flores struggling up until this previous ball game against Baylor, and even in the Baylor game, him not always being comfortable and him missing a few wide open dudes here and there, why are the tight ends not more built into the reads? Like if you look at Iowa State, one of the things that I think was always beneficial to not only a Brock Purdy, but also a Rocco Becht, all of the tight ends that Iowa State constantly has in their system. So even this year when they don't have their two NFL wide receivers at their disposal, it doesn't necessarily matter because their tight end usage is so ingrained into the offense that Rocco Becht knows precisely where he's going to be. So if his first and second read isn't there, he knows where the tight end is going to be. Sometimes it's very evident that the tight end is the first read, sometimes the second read. Why is that not something we incorporate more here at Oklahoma State? I hope that Doug Meacham is going to do that, because one of the things that we can all assume with Doug Meacham's knowledge and all of the college football he's been around, if you have a quarterback that's struggling to get in a rhythm, that's struggling to find some confidence, you need to have some of those safety valves that are available to him. And it's not always going to be a running back. However, Rodney Fields getting loose for a ridiculous catch down the sidelines. You can't argue that it didn't make Zane look a little bit more smooth throughout the rest of the game. So if we're doing any pleading here while we're looking for this identity, and if we're hoping or assuming that Arizona is going to identify that Oklahoma State had a better rushing attack in this particular ball game, and the passing attack under Shamar Rigby, it was something that you have to pay attention to. Nobody's probably talking about the tight ends, because coming into this, yeah, everyone's going to talk about Josh Ford, but maybe not everybody's going to talk about Will Money. Not everybody's going to be focused on the fact that, Bryce Hammond is going to be out for potentially a considerable amount of time still yet. This is an opportunity, in my opinion, for Doug Meacham to help Zane Flores grow even more. Once again, this is an identity-finding season. This is an identity-finding game. If it seems like we found a little bit of one with the 1-2 combination of Rodney Fields and Trent Howland, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't start utilizing the tight ends more so into the game plan. Not just as a safety valve, not just as an added layer of security just in case things go crazy, but perhaps this is a game that we need to take advantage of the middle of the field a little bit more. We need to take advantage of the linebackers that are going to void an area because they're going to have to come try to stop Trent Howland. And maybe before this game, we didn't have an adequate enough rushing attack to utilize the tight ends and make them part of the first or second read. If there is an opportunity, it's probably in this ball game. For the first time this season, the defense has to take into account what we're doing at the running back position. And if somebody's 6'3", 250 pounds, and he runs a 4.6 40, you're going to want to be a little bit closer. You're going to want to gain a little bit more momentum so you have a head of steam when you're trying to take down Trent Howland. So I think in this particular game, if there's any, we've talked about all year, where the middle area between the linebackers and the safeties are most accessible, it should be this ball game, because it starts off of the running game. And in order to bring down somebody as big and powerful as Trent Howland, you can't just sit and wait on him. So you're going to have to take a little bit more of a chance. You're going to have to leave your AO a little bit quicker to build up enough steam to take out Trent Howland. That is why I think that there could be some openings behind the linebackers in this ball game, and that also gives Zane Flores a little bit of an easier look. It's an easier look right down the middle of the field. It's an easier throw right down the seams. And it all starts with the success of the running backs. So now that we finally have that, this should be a game where we finally get to see more purposeful utilization of the tight ends. Last but not least, the NFL season is here to help all of us with capitalization. We're about to talk a little bit about some of the NFL Cowboys. FanDuel has an offer that you cannot miss out on right now. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if it's a winner. All you have to do is pick a bet, put down your $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it has so many different ways to play. You can build parlays, you can do player props, you can even jump in right when the game kicks off. And that makes watching football much more exciting because of the investment level that you now have in that particular matchup. So whether you're just a casual fan or you love diving into the statistics, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Make sure that you go visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. It's easy. Go to FanDuel.com, download the app, Play that first $5. If it's a winner, you get 300 bones back and bonus bets to use all across the app by going to FanDuel.com or downloading the FanDuel app. All right, so we're going to cruise on through the end here. I would imagine a lot of you witnessed Tyreek Hill. That leg injury is pretty rough, pretty rugged, and it stinks too. Monday Night Football, the Dolphins get a dub, and now Tyreek's probably out for the season. That's probably fair, I think, for us to take that leap. But outside of Tyreek Hill's devastating injury, it was another Hill that carried the day for Oklahoma State faithful, and that was Justice Hill. Justice Hill found the end zone multiple times. He also was an absolute terror returning the ball. In this particular ball game, Justice Hill had a run of 71 yards that was taken all the way to the house. He had 133 yards returning on 5 kicks and another 41 yards receiving. So he had a 250-yard day, and yet still somehow magically the Ravens dropped to 1-3 on the season as they lost to the Chiefs, who have also been kind of reeling. But that wasn't it. We also had Anthony Goodlow, the defensive end from Oklahoma State, get in on a couple tackles, also get in on the tackle for loss with the Cardinals. Ollie Gordon, yes, the Tyreek Hill injury was devastating, and he was a very pedestrian. 6 carries, 10 rushing yards with a fumble recovery. It was probably one of the least amounts of utilization that Ollie's had this season, but it'll be kind of fun next week because Ollie Gordon and the Dolphins get to take on Chuba Hubbard and the Panthers. Chuba had himself a pretty nice day. 10 carries, 49 yards, 3 catches, 20 yards receiving. Tevin Jenkins for the Browns, no longer with the Bears, obviously. He was able to get in the game and have a decent 10 little snaps there. Tyler Lacey, formerly of the Jaguars, now is with the Lions. He had a tackle in the game. He also had a quarterback hit over the weekend. Tay Martin, boy, it would be nice to have him back on the sidelines unless we get more Shamar Rigby doing what he's doing. He has his second catch in the NFL for 14 yards with the Commanders. Emmanuel Ogbah had a partner at one point in time in Lacey, but now he's a one-man band in Jacksonville. He was able to get on the statistical categories with a tackle and a quarterback hit as well. Josh Hill is still an offensive lineman doing the daggone thing with the Colts. And then Tylan Wallace was also able to get in with the Ravens and get a nice little snag for just under 15 yards as well. The matchup between Chuba Hubbard, Justice Hill, pretty exciting to see. And the reason I wanted to circle back around to this NFL stuff is because if Zach Robinson were to become one of the leading candidates, or he is a leading candidate, if he were to become the guy, one of the things that's not getting talked about enough, in my personal opinion, you could talk about the OC, you could talk about them being top 7 in the NFL this previous season in passing yards, and you could talk about what looked like a reemergence of Cousins, and it looked like the development of Michael Penix. You could talk about all that. And the donors that would likely be willing to hand Oklahoma State football more money under Zach Robinson and Gundy, you could talk about all that stuff. But one of the biggest things that I'm excited about, if it were to be a Zach Robinson conversation, is to rebuild the bridge of all the heavy hitter alumnus. We've had a couple episodes on this show about how Des Bryant being on the sidelines for Bedlam was one of the coolest things I've ever seen as an Oklahoma State fan in my lifetime. Him jumping up and chest bumping Gundy. Unfortunately, Gundy didn't like that stuff. With Mike Gundy no longer being here, though, even if it wasn't Zach Robinson, I would imagine that one of the things that the next coach is going to do is probably find a way to involve the heavy hitters. Because if it were to be a Zach Robinson, and let's say that one of the first things he's able to do is to recruit Des Bryant and Russell Okung and Brandon Pettigrew and Kendall Hunter and Jeremy Smith and all of these heavy hitter Cowboys, Darius Bowman, to get those dudes out recruiting on behalf of Oklahoma State. We have tons of NFL players, but we as a fan base don't always get that connection to them. Matter of fact, we hardly ever even hear about when they are on campus or when they do come to games. It's not something that's publicly talked about, which means we're not getting the benefits of what some universities utilize. When they have their Doak Walkers or Blitnikoffs or Heismans or whatever, the heavy hitters that have NFL careers that carry a pretty significant name, those dudes being involved in recruiting. That is something that we have missed over Mike Gundy's entire tenure in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And we know this because we've had several heavy hitters, like some of the ones we just named on this show. And they'll talk about, Gundy's not bad by any stretch, but it's not an emphasis, right? We're not getting Oklahoma State representatives reaching out on a weekly basis trying to get NFL heavy hitters to Oklahoma State, to Stillwater, to the game day, on the recruiting trail. We don't do any of that. We haven't done any of that under Mike Gundy. And we've had former players that have offered to do all of that. And it was just never, viewed as beneficial for whatever reason. Even if it's not Zach, I would imagine that is one of the first things that the new coach does is, wait a second, you're telling me we've got all these NFL dudes and we don't talk about none of them and they don't help Oklahoma State publicly with anything? Why is that a thing? That needs to be the first thing to be fixed. But the reason I am more excited if it were to be Zach in that position, because he carries a little bit of a bigger name. He carries more cachet, and he has the ability to bridge gaps with even some of the newer generations. So it wouldn't just be the Des Bryants and the Russell Okungs and the Tatum Bells out there. It would be some of the newer Cowboys too. And we just talked about some of the dudes that are in the NFL right now that maybe we could utilize. You say what you want about the reasons that Chuba and Justice don't like Gundy, which I don't fully agree with. But nonetheless, we should be able to utilize these dudes to help Oklahoma State, to help send guys to Oklahoma State, to help publicly promote why Oklahoma State is a perfect place for you to play. And we need the tweets and the Instas and all that, telling recruits, make sure you go to Boone Pickens, make sure you go check out Stillwater, make sure you go check out the best kept secret, the Oregon of the Midwest. That is the one thing, if you were to say about Gundy that has been the biggest problem, and you wanted to, look past some of the other conference title, Bedlam, whatever, it's this. And I think most former legendary veterans would largely agree. Again, it's not like they're chastised and you're not allowed to come to games or come to campus, but it isn't going to be utilized per se. Like, sure, you can come to games, cool. But we're not going to set it up, and we're not going to talk about it all week, and we're not going to tell recruits all week, or we're not going to have you telling some of these guys that might be taking visits during that week that, oh, by the way, Des Bryant's going to be there. Chuba Hubbard's going to be there. Jalen Warren's going to be there. And this is an opportunity that we 100% must take advantage of, because a lot of these old school heavy hitter veterans that love Oklahoma State, that bleed orange, that were loyal and true, they've wanted that level of connection. They've wanted to feel wanted. And that is one of the biggest reasons that I am excited about this coaching search. Because even if it was a crazy name like a Gus Malzahn or John Gruden. I mean, John Gruden did that unboxing where he talked about Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas and Bob Fenimore. We need more of that. Yes, we have the Ring of Honor stuff. And yes, we do get Barry and Thurman back a decent amount. But yeah, they're legends and they're GOATs, but they're not as, at the forefront of this generation's view. And Zach Robinson has the bridge to the NFL dudes, the old school dudes, the new school dudes. I think it could be a good marriage if it works out. All right, y'all. So we're going to have this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast people out there, you're everything that makes this work. I appreciate what you do. Go do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. All right, y'all. Later, taters.